known as Master Chim, and welcome to the Warrior Stream. I am here every Wednesday at noon. Right now, I'm streaming on my main YouTube channel and the Justin Garcia Facebook page, the Master Chim Facebook page, and even on Twitter. So today, we got some good stuff to go over. Alex, what's up? Jamie, what's going on, my man? All right. Anybody that is watching on YouTube, just do me a favor and let me know that you could hear me. Got a pretty good talk. Is the framework prepared for today, and I think we're going to have a good time. Corey, what's up, my man? Thank you. Appreciate that. All right. So housekeeping, as usual, make sure you guys are subscribed to the page. If you are not, make sure you like this. If you do, if you don't, you can like it too. But if you guys have not yet signed up to the Master Chim letter, which is my free email newsletter, do that at masterchim.com. The link is down in the description, and you should be able to go to masterchim.com. It's my new site. One of the things I'm doing now that I wasn't doing before is the Master the 24-Hour Cycle Balance Management Program that I created, I believe, last year, and normally sold for $47. Is now being offered for free just for being on the list. So you sign up to the newsletter, you get sent an email that has a discount code so you don't have to pay for that program. You can watch the program, you get the emails. You don't like the emails, you unsubscribe, and everyone lives happily ever after. Alan, what's going on, my man? Yarn Saxa, good to see you. All the way from Minnesota. Good, right on. All right, so today, leadership has its limits. Leadership has its limits. There are so many dynamics that I deal with on a regular basis with my coaching students and or those in my mastermind group when it comes to leadership. And as is the case with a lot of positions that people express or people express to other people, so those other people in turn internalize, we have to sort of get terms straight before we start looking to use those terms. Caceres, what's up, brother man? Before we start to use those terms to establish our own positions, which will help us navigate our lives, right? Leadership is one of the more significant ones, especially in the plight of men today. Because I think it is probably most efficient in men today, which is a root cause I truly feel for a lot of the world's ills, society's ills. And we're going to start off with the list that I sent out in this morning's email. So you got to get those emails because you'll be a step ahead of everybody. So what leadership actually does, that's the first talking point. Now, I say talking point, I just needed a little bit of framework because I could tend to ramble on forever because I got a lot of stuff to say about the things that I usually talk about. So the framework that I produced starts off with what leadership actually does. And I think it's a good point to make. I think it's a good thing to sort of determine, well, when we say leadership, what exactly are we referring to? What do we want leadership to represent? Because no matter how you define it, if you're going to use it as a term of value, then it has to be consistent, right? If it's not a consistent application of the term, then what does the term even signify? Why even use it at all, right? So one of the things I don't want to do is, because I think it's a waste of time to argue what a leader is, because there is a context there that is implied yet not really stated. What is a leader supposed to do where? What is the goal you are trying to achieve where you would install a leader to achieve that goal? Like, there is a context that needs to be, thought about when using some of these terms. So let's start with that, what a leader actually does, or what leadership actually does, as I had written it. Leadership, in my definition, is how I use it when you hear me using the term, is introducing an individual or individuals to a mission and facilitating the building of that relationship by either directing them or by educating them, guiding them from behind their position on the road. But ultimately, the end result of good leadership is advocates are created because of that leader for the mission that the leader was leading them toward. If I am a good leader of masculinity, my sons will become representatives and the next generation of advocates for that same value that I represent. In black belts, right, I talk about how in martial arts, everybody's got a different idea what a black belt's supposed to be. And, and I have one myself. And my idea of what a black belt has always been is I could take one of my black belts and I could put them on an island that has no martial arts school or anything like that. And I can come back 10 years later and the black belt has basically grown a jungle gym, which is the name of my martial arts school, has grown that jungle gym. And you would walk into the jungle gym and it would resemble culturally the same type of culture that the other jungle gyms represented. The students could leave that jungle gym and come to my headquarters of the jungle gym, and they would fit in seamlessly. So a black belt is an advocate for the culture of the jungle gym. Now, obviously, what that culture represents in my particular case with the jungle gym is a level of proficiency in martial arts, grappling and striking, MMA, things of that nature. But it's really the culture along with that. It's not to be separated. Some people, they judge a black belt in martial arts by they've achieved a certain level of application of martial arts, in which case I would ask, when those people become old, frail, or injured and they stop being able to participate, do you take the black belt back? And, we get into conditions. There's a reason, let's put it this way, long story short, there's a reason why I believe what I believe and not what a lot of other people believe. And it's because of that process of just, sort of Socratic inquiry, adds to its consistency. So all that being said, leadership is creating that next generation. It's connecting them to the value of the mission that the leader himself is an advocate for. And in turn, these people can become advocates themselves. Now, I honestly feel that leadership is the biggest deficiency in men these days. And it is, as I mentioned earlier, probably the root cause of a lot of the issues that men are facing, because there's a difference between, let me get through this list before I go on any tangents, but leader versus mentors. Leaders should not be conflated with mentors, because the mentor can lead from the back of the path. And what I mean by that is a leader is literally the tip of the spear. He is literally the one who is sort of the conduit by which an individual bridges the gap of their lack of understanding to the understanding. And the leader is a part of that, a link in the chain, so to speak. The middleman, even, you could say. A mentor is slightly different. A mentor basically tells the follower or the mentee where the mission is, informs how they could best navigate it, has the experience that qualifies their expertise that the mentee would even listen to this mentor to begin with. But the mentor is not the person, and again, this is a semantic, distinction that I'm making according to my use of these terms, but it's consistent with the models that I apply them to, which can't be said for a lot of other, paradigms. But the mentor does not need to be a middleman. The mentor is Dungeon Master in the old Dungeons and Dragons cartoon. He is Yoda. He's the guy that he's not going to do it with you. He's certainly not going to do it for you, but he's going to give you the information to where you could do it yourself. And there's value in that. So when I draw the distinction between the leader and the mentor, that is, I'd say, a key difference. It is, am I guiding somebody towards the value of a mission, or am I the person who is also, by the same token, modeling it and therefore presenting himself as the tip of the spear that can be followed along the same path? So if we say the path towards understanding, the path towards achievement or success or, mission accomplished, whatever, however we want to label the end of that journey, the leader is in front of the follower, whereas the mentor is behind the mentee. Now, why leadership is mandatory for all men, right? So this is what I was starting to allude to before I wanted to draw the distinction between a leader and mentor. With men, we are subject to this same dynamics and influences and parameters of human psychology and behavior as anybody else is. So what the hell am I talking about? Whenever somebody speaks with ambiguity, whenever somebody speaks in some sort of contradictory way, they wind up creating uncertainty in the person who is observing them. And that person who's observing them could be a third-party observer. It could be the person who's being communicated to. But when they sense an inconsistency or a lack of understanding or confusion, that instability in the identity of the other person who is being inconsistent, a lot of times is going to be interpreted as a deficiency in strength. I used this analogy before, and I think it fits pretty well. If you're in a gym and you are going to lift weights, there is a correlation between stability and strength, right? There's a reason why a barbell is more stable than dumbbells, and why, by and large, people tend to be stronger with a barbell than with dumbbells. Or to draw an even more a more extreme example, people are going to be stronger on a machine than they will be in the dumbbell variation or dumbbell model of what that machine is built after. Now, what's the main difference? Where do we get this spectrum of strength? Well, it really correlates to the amount of stability that is being provided for by the tool or by the practitioner. It gives me more to be responsible for if I am lifting dumbbells. Whereas if I had that same type of movement represented in a machine, it would now be stabilized by that machine. The stability that the machine gives it allows me to delegate more power to moving weight. Therefore, I will be able to be stronger or lift more weight in that stabilized movement. When people are communicating, when people are representing who they are as a representation of their mission, right? This is who I am. This is what I'm about. This is what I stand for. The more inconsistency or even ambiguity, meaning the vagueness of how they communicate and act and represent themselves, the weaker they will seem to other people, as if they just don't quite have it figured out yet. One of the reasons I'm such a big advocate for the formulas and protocols that I talk about in my coaching and mastermind group is because it adds certainty where ambiguity may reside in an individual's journey. There are going to be things we don't understand. There are going to be things we don't know yet. There are going to be things that we just don't have the answers for. If you are somebody who is pursuing growth, that is a very normal situation to be in. But what you can have are the processes, the codes by which you stand that can be consistent. And that consistent nature of who you are and what you stand for is going to be communicated as being stable to the people who you are coming into contact with. So the more you are consistent in who you are, the more you understand what you are pursuing, the more you have a code and live that code consistently day to day, the more stable an identity you will appear to the people around you. So what is the consequence of representing yourself as somebody who is consistent? You come off as being strong, as having a strength. There's a reason why I define self-power. You always hear me say self-power. I'm always using this term self-power. And I define it as the ability to retain one's identity despite the level of stressor in his ecosystem. Whoever I am, when it's sunny, I'm the same person when it's raining. Whoever I am when I'm rich is the same person I am when I am poor. These outside external factors do not determine how I conduct myself. Anybody who could live while saying that is in possession of a tremendous amount of self-power. What is the opposite of that? To draw a contrast, the person who, he basically is sad when it rains. He's sad when things don't go his way, that are out of his control. He's happy when things are out of his control, do go his way. And everything internal is being decided almost exclusively by the outside world. Well, these people are inconsistent. When somebody who has that level of malleability in their personality, when they are making an alliance with another individual, well, who is that person beholden to make good on that alliance? It's the person that they happen to be in that particular state, that day, that time that the alliance was made. But if the next day you're so emotional that you are acting basically functionally like a different person, is that ally still beholden to you based on the alliance that he committed himself to? I would argue, unfortunate for him, yes, but that's why you want to make alliances with people who exhibit the consistency in the identity that I'm describing. When you are somebody who conducts yourself consistently, you will have people that will trust you. They will see you as somebody who can be relied upon to be the same. They're going to want to connect with you that way. They're going to want more people like that in their lives. And that's how I draw the line from what I'm describing to leadership. People want to follow those people who are exhibiting the strength and stability that they themselves might not have experienced. There's a lot of inconsistency in how people want to live. And so much of it, just because of how spoiled we all are, because of the surplus of comfort that exists in society today, we make so many decisions on convenience, on comfort, on inconvenience and discomfort. Like, what we are tracking is really it's like we want to achieve, if comfort is a form of success, let's say in the evolution of mankind, whenever you are comfortable, you basically have done something right. How could we base the expectations of our experience on something that historically was just the consequence, the positive feedback, incentivizing the good things that we had to do to achieve it? We had to do good things in order to be comfortable. Yet now, the expectation, the default expectation of our experience is based on preserving that rather than engaging in this. Sean, good to see you, brother, man. Thank you for that. Cherrytown Vibe, what's up, bub? He says, damn, that statement on growth gave me a ton of perspective. It takes a lot of discipline to stay consistent, though. Well, luckily, we could be perfect next life, right? I am also an advocate for, I'm sure you guys have been exposed to at some point, something about a ladder, right? And climbers versus sitters. You know, are you somebody that looks to progress? You know, for me, I've come such a long way from where I'm at, but there are people who I look at as sort of models, you know, sometimes a transcendent alliance I have with these people, the friends in my head, but they represent being on rungs that I haven't even built toward. I started off with a lot of, you know, my own baggage, like we all do, but mine was specific to me. Like, yeah, I was locked up as a teenager. Anger issues does not begin to describe the toolbox that I showed up to interactions with, you know, and it's a process and we don't have to be perfect. You know, it's like if somebody had a diet that they were on, right? An eating plan, diet, whatever, and they have this framework and this plan they're supposed to do, and then one day, emotional state, boom, cathartically eating, boom, they're off of it. And let's say that you're a friend to this individual that just went through that. What are you going to say? If not, well, get back on it tomorrow. You see, sometimes we think we're incentivizing failure when we ignore its inevitability at times. You know, earlier in the talk, I've said that, you know, it's if you're somebody who's pursuing growth, if you're somebody who's looking to broaden their horizons, become more valuable, more formidable, whatever the increase in capability, you know, is in your particular life, you're going to face stuff that's going to stress, stimulate, restrict you, create some resistance. That is the stuff that allows you to forge yourself along that path even further. If you are somebody who has never encountered an obstacle, you know, why would you assume to discover or be able to discover anything that would make you half worth a shit to begin with? I've used this example before where I say all of us, you know, we've seen somebody and either we've used the phrase or it certainly would apply, you know, this guy over here has never been punched in the face. And we kind of know what that means, right? Especially as men, like, yeah, this fucking guy hasn't been punched in the face. Well, yeah, we're criticizing this individual, but we're also saying that you become more valuable when you're punched in the face, right? Because you don't act like that guy, right? So getting punched in the face obviously has some value. I dare you to find somebody who ever gets punched in the face and says thank you to the guy that punched him, though, right? That's the sort of paradox that a lot of these lessons represent to us. It's like the obstacles are the things that build us and forge us into being worthy and valuable. Yet we condemn every single one of them, right? So the whole thing is, like, sometimes we're going to try our best and maybe we don't get to where we wanted to go. I'll bring up another thing that I've shared before, that when it comes to my kids training jujitsu, like my kids' jujitsu, by my black belt standards, is terrible. But that's not where they're at. That's not the plan. The plan for them is to be tough, to enjoy being on the mat, to build all the attributes that in over 20 years of running a school, I know the best people have. I'm not worried about the technique. They'll learn the technique. I have people that have joined my school in their 20s that became black belts and became formidable. Like my kids, like there's no rush, but we're building work ethic. We're building, the anti-fragility. We're building, the approach and the comfort to contact, physical contact, and like the struggle and the perseverance that's required to train in some levels of intensity. Like those are the things I'm worried about. Every single time they went and either competed or they had a class where they did some sparring, rolling, whatever. The only thing I ever asked them at the end of it is, did you try your best or did you take it easy? I never asked them if they won. I never asked them if they, beat this kid or if this kid beat them or what place did they get. And I didn't care about any of that shit because those aren't the values that are going to build the man. One of the best things about being the best 10-year-old in the country is everybody knows that you're the best 10-year-old in the country. One of the worst things about being the best 10-year-old in the country is you think you're actually worth a shit because you're the best 10-year-old in the country. So I keep that conversation out of my kids' heads. It's nope, you ain't shit yet. Not to the outside world. Who are you to you? That's where we start. What do you stand for? What's your reputation? What are your beliefs? How do you face your challenges? Do you quit? Are you lazy? Do you become emotional? Do you recruit help because you don't have the confidence to try to do something because you might fail? Are you the guy that doesn't get into a fight and tells everybody he's undefeated? That character building process those are the building blocks for the man. Not the short wins or the low level wins. So by the same token, if we're building that character, there are going to be some hiccups along the way. There are going to be some bumps in the road. So we don't have to be perfect. We just have to not quit. That's all it is. All right. Caceres says, comfort should be short-lived. Ease is a greater threat to progress than hardship. It's really, it just disconnects people from the process, right? And there are plenty of applications we could look at this to illustrate it. Born and raised in the Bronx, I didn't grow up hunting. I grew up going fishing with my pops, and I know how to fish, but hunting, just not my thing. I still endeavor to become better at it on occasion, but not my thing. Well, there's a point in society where if you didn't know how to get food, you didn't eat. So if hunting was not your thing, living was not your thing, right? But we removed that consequence. We removed the consequence. We still want the food, but we look at the process as something that's, it'll get done. And I think there are a lot of processes that people have been separated from because of the surplus of success of society. This is the aquarium. In the aquarium, the big hand comes in a couple times a day and it spreads all the resources on the fish, right? That's what we live in today. So what it's like to actually perform the process, ourselves, a lot of us have been disconnected from. And I would say a very fundamental lens to use is the one that my man Caceres shared just there. It's like hardship it represents engaging the process. Ease, on the other hand, historically, fundamentally represents a successful process having been navigated, right? It's like we've already done the hard stuff if it's easy now. So if you're expecting easy without having the same expectation of doing the process that leads to it, you better make sure you're taken care of. And a lot of people's relationships with these dynamics in modern day society, whether they know it or not, they are dependent on being taken care of. right? So I think I covered all of these points. I know that, in my 20 plus years running a school, I've been a leader to a lot of men. I've been a mentor to a lot of men. Some I've been both leader and mentor. Leader to a certain state, mentor moving forward. But depending on what the nature of the alliance was, it's important to understand from the leader's point of view when you are no longer seeing the feedback from your follower or your mentee that suggests they are going to advocate for the mission that you have been building them towards pursuing this whole time. If you look at somebody who, let me think of a good example of this. Let's talk about the Karate Kid, right? So Miyagi and Daniel-san. Let's say that Miyagi put Daniel-san through all these different struggles. Wax the fucking floor, the car, the house, the fucking fence, all these different things that he had to do, and the training and the balance on the boat, and the kata on the fucking pole, and all that stuff that he had to do. Let's say all that happened, and at some point in the process, Daniel wanted to, use his newfound martial arts ability to just beat up the bullies and do something, I'll say, that by and large went against Miyagi's moral principles. It would be up to Miyagi at that point to say he is no longer heading towards where I have intended to guide him this whole time. And at that point, he needs to stop investing in that individual, in Daniel-san. Because Daniel-san's not trying to be the Karate Kid. He's trying to be another asshole that knows karate in that movie, right? Which would not have been his intent. And similarly, from a leadership standpoint, when you are investing in people, there's a certain point where it's like, if they're not going where the whole reason for you leading them suggested you would be headed toward, you have to revisit why it is that you are investing them in the first place. And that investment needs to stop, right? Maybe, your process as a leader or mentor, because it applies to both in this situation, is one of accountability. Every once in a while you do the check-in and you say, okay, this is still what you want. This is still what you're going to do. You might do that literally, or you might just, create some sort of an interaction where you can assess that for yourself. But the reason I even offer that is I am always going to advocate against investing in anybody that has already proven themselves to be a bad investment. Because what winds up happening is it's either the sunk cost fallacy, whereby you are saying, well, I've already invested this much, I might as well keep going, right? Or it's the gambler's fallacy of, well, he's made a lot of mistakes, but, he'll get it right eventually. I know he'll get it right eventually. He's due, he can't keep getting it wrong. Eventually he'll get it right, and it's just, they're both called fallacies for a reason, because they're not true. They're certainly not reliable. They're certainly not worth being a component to how you live your life. So as a leader, stemming back to the original premise of this talk, when you have a level of clarity and understanding in who you are, you will also have the discipline and, dare I say, in some cases, the courage to end the investments in certain allies because of everything that I just described. You won't need to define yourself as this person's guide, right? You'll see it in, I see it in boxing gyms over the years, very similar, type of dynamic, whereby you'll have a kid who is being coached by a boxing coach, and maybe the coach is decent, maybe he's limited, but whatever, he was certainly of value at the beginning of this kid's journey. And at a certain point, the kid wants out. He wants to move on to the next level. He doesn't have any more loyalty to this guy, but this guy has given this kid everything. And he's waiting for this sort of return. But that return was never promised. And if he were to sit down and actually think about the dynamics at play, he could probably agree that that feedback, that return on investment is probably improbable. Probably improbable. Is probable to not happen. I don't know. I don't think I said it any clearer the second chance. But, you see this in certain situations where, like parents and children, it's slightly different because in the children, the parents see themselves to an extent, but as a coach who has coached, 20 something years now, it's a unique experience. I get to bring my sons to wrestling practice. And one of my sons competed in his first wrestling tournament a few weeks ago. And it's just, I get to be on this side of it. I've never been on this side because even in jiu-jitsu, it's like, I'm still a jiu-jitsu guy. I'm still the black belt from Jungle Gym and stuff. So it's just a different dynamic. But wrestling, I ain't shit, so I go there and I'm just a dad, and it's interesting to see these other parents and how these parents are living through their children. And, there's something to be said for, you look at the burnout rate with some of these young kids and some of these high-level sports, youth sports, and it could almost be attributed directly and very easily to some parent, usually the dad, living vicariously through the son. And the dad wants those medals, and the son's got to go and get them. And at a certain point, the son just says, I don't want to do this anymore. Everything in my life is great unless I'm here. So these are dynamics that we could pay attention to. What's up, Johnny? Jamie says, strong men create easy times to create weak men, but wise men do not leave their offspring to be raised by circumstance. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. The investments that we make in our children, I'm of the mindset, and that's my position, is like, that's the top of the food chain in terms of my priorities in life. It's like my kids are, that's number one, in terms of how I invest my energy. What is my legacy? What's the purpose of all this? It's my 4 children right now. When I look at these kids, especially young boys who are raised without men, in their homes, I just saw, and I didn't research this, so I don't think I'm paraphrasing it, but if it's not accurate, don't hold me accountable. Like, what a cop-out. I should have researched it. I'm going to say it anyway. Fuck it. I think it's true. I'll just say that I heard this woman, she was giving a presentation, and she said that statistically, and I've spoken about, statistically what happens to young boys when they're raised in homes without fathers. But what they were saying, what she added to that, which I had never heard, was that statistically, not only, or I should say, the statistical vulnerabilities that these kids show without having a home or without having a father in their home is resolved statistically, comparing the numbers. The kids are going to be better off, meaning they're not going to succumb to a lot of those consequences, those negative outcomes, if they do have a dad in their home, or if they're in a home with only a dad. And man, that was a unique one. It's like, yeah, it makes sense. I never did the research. I never heard it, studied and put out there as a stat. But I'll be damned if it isn't, what I would have anticipated. So let me say it a little bit more clearly. When children grow up in homes without dads, they are susceptible to disproportionately a certain number of circumstances, negative outcomes, jail, unwed parents, drugs, dropping out of school, like the list goes on and on, depression, suicide, all these things that statistically are raised significantly when there's not a father in home. Now, what we would presume is, oh, so the kids who have mother and father are better off, and we'd be right. But what she added to the conversation was that, oh, yeah, the mom doesn't need to be there. So long as the dad's there, and it could be the dad only, those statistical vulnerabilities don't exist. So I've counseled a lot of men over the years, and a lot of them didn't like what I had to say about fathering, being a father to a young child. And let me not get in trouble, right? But let me say this, I'm gonna whatever. Like I would talk to men, and they'd have a newborn, and they'd say, yeah, like my wife and I were taking turns getting up and feeding the baby. And I'd look at them and be like, why? Are you a fucking retard? Like you're not a mom. Like the baby doesn't need you. Like, I'm sorry, there's no other way to put it, more gently, but a newborn baby doesn't need you at all. The newborn baby needs you to make sure no threats come through the threshold and that there's food to be eaten for the mother. So the mother could feed. Like, this is the natural order of things. But it is the, modern lens. It is the narcissism. It is just the deficiency of masculinity in men that leads to these conclusions that early on in life, like, it's supposed to be, yeah, I take care of the baby. She takes care of the baby. I have 4 kids. I've changed diapers less than 5 times. There's a certain point where the kids go from needing, especially young boys, go from needing the mom to needing the dad. Early on, the dad is not needed that much. The presence is there, right? The imprinting of seeing a familiar face over and over again builds a bond that that a baby winds up having and leveraging later on. Like, all those things are there. So I'm not saying that, hey, just come back, when the kid's 8. But as far as the mothering of the child, the father doesn't have to do the mothering. But here's the thing. The mother isn't doing the fathering either. I love that there are stats now to back up the shit that I've been talking about for 20 years. There is a point where a young man needs to be around his dad or the best substitute that can be found for a dad. Because mom just ain't going to have the answers that that young man needs. And when we look at just the emotional formulas that so many fatherless men develop as tools, right? Conflict resolution in the modern man is the most feminized assortment of strategies that have ever existed in mankind. Why? Because boys are being taught how to be men by women who could only observe what they think a man's supposed to be, but also cannot help but to subject the child to their own biases as a woman, which is just natural. I'm not saying there's any intent or anything like that or negligence. It's very hard for a woman to father a child, especially a young man. And you look at the emotional men of society today, and it makes sense. It's like this cause effect. Like, what is the mystery here? When I look at women who badmouth their children's father to their children, it's like, you selfish piece of shit. I don't care. Like, the guys that I have coached over the years, like, I don't care if their ex-wife was banging the fucking neighbor when he was at work. Don't you dare tell your children that their mother was some sort of fucking whore or whatever. Like, that is half of their identity you're talking about right there. You put it in a way that they can look back at how they see their mother that doesn't detract from them being able to be proud of themselves. That's your fucking job. And it goes both directions, mother to father and vice versa. Cherrytown Vibe says, shit, MC. And if you guys knew Cherrytown Vibe, it'd be perfect. My ass was an AC gambling. If you couldn't tell, Cherrytown Vibe is one of my students at the Bronx Academy. It's my man Magoo. I love Magoo. I was at AC gambling, and I started with 20 and left with 10. I say this to say I knew when to quit. I still had to feed my lady. That's right. Well, you had a governor, right, or a sort of a self-regulating mechanism that character often includes, right? People without that character, people without therefore those mechanisms, don't have that same type of experience, and we see it, far too often. I don't give bums money, right? Why? Because the one thing you give bad habits, the one thing you should never give bad habits is a bigger budget. That's the quote. When I see bums, if I wanted to help them, there's a lot of different ways I could help them. None of them would be giving them money. Yet that's the thing that people do. It's like, no, that guy doesn't have the character to take the money and process a production. He might not have the know-how either, right? What's up, Erin? She says, your quote at the end of today's email is perfect. Never forget the taxes and interest when tallying up the cost. And I'm not talking about money. I every day I write the quote of the day for the email. And I sat down writing that one today, and it's like, I don't want to be too on the nose that this isn't about money, but I also don't want to be too cute, and witty, or so I think, that nobody fucking understands what I'm talking about. So that was like the acceptable middle ground. But the essence of the quote is people make decisions and they look at the upfront costs of what these decisions, require. What do I have to invest? But they don't look at the consequences. I made this point the other day in a coaching session with one of my guys, and I said, to a lot of people, they look at, I want to make $1 million at this hedge fund. And what does it take? What do I have to do, to make $1 million at this hedge fund? And they go, okay, I need to learn about this. I need to get these licenses, and I need to work 100 hours a week for 3 years. It's like they have the list and they're like, yep, I'm going to pay that. But then they do it and they get the $1 million, but they're unhealthy. They're addicted to coke. They're divorced. Their kids don't respect them. If that was a consequence of engaging in that consequence is part of the cost, right? So everything that produces itself as an outcome is part of the cost of an action. And a lot of times we ignore that part of it, right? Second order effects, third order effects. What are the things that happen after the things happen after the things, et cetera, et cetera? I found this interesting observation, somewhat related. They say that chess grandmasters, right? And I'm a mediocre chess player. I was probably better when I was 10 than I am right now. They say that grandmasters of chess can see 20 moves ahead. Like the different permutations of possibilities, 20 moves ahead. And even that, it's like what the, it borders on like trying to see what in the fourth dimension. It's like, we know what one dimension is, 2 dimensions, 3 dimensions, but it's hard to conceptualize 4 dimensions. Like when you start talking about this guy can see 20 moves ahead, like we could say, wow, but we really don't know what the fuck we're talking about. It's like, yeah, that just, put it this way, it sounds so complex that I can't even fucking figure out conceptualizing it, right? So all that being said, we know it's impressive, and we know they're certainly capable. We see the guys that play all the fucking masters 10 at a time, and they still dominate everybody, and they look fucking bored while they're doing it. Well, one of the things that I saw shared, and there's another one of these things, is that they actually measured the amount of calories that were being burned by chess players. And the amount of, it was like 650 calories of just added to the regular, caloric rate that he had, this metabolism, 650 calories burned playing chess for 2 hours, which in this, story that I saw it shared in is the equivalent of, and there's a lot of different, equivalences, but the equivalent of a tennis player playing tennis for an hour, the amount of calories burned, which speaks to how much shit is actually going on in their head, right? I found that to be pretty impressive. And it's like, yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, that makes sense now that you think about it, right? And I would say the whole reason of me bringing that up is there are some people who are just better at burning some more brain power, figuring these things out before they make decisions. Other people, they don't burn many calories when it comes to the decision-making process. On my 15th birthday, I slapped my mother. Did I mention that Cherrytown Vibe is one of my students in the Bronx? I slapped my mother because she thought she was going to check me over my grades. My dad tried to kill me. After that, I worshipped the ground she walked on. Well, as another, Bronx teenager at one point in my life, I understand how we could be just making wrong decisions. I can't say I've ever slapped my mother, but I'm glad your father was there to try and kill you. And I'm glad the whole adventure worked out for the best. Oh, one of the more unique comments. So this time I slapped my mother, right? It's like, what? Aaron says, funny you bring up chess. Jamie had literally been saying chess over and over for about 30 seconds before you mentioned it. Oh, that's fucking perfect. There you go. Great minds, Jamie. Great minds. All right, right on. Well, I covered everything I wanted to cover. I appreciate you guys participating. Let's call it there. You guys know I'm here every week. If you are not yet signed up to the email, go to Master Chim. You get Master the 24-Hour Cycle for free just for doing it. What does Cherrytown Vibe say? I thought it was going to be, then there's other time I slapped my grandmother. So speaking of leadership, what do you think of the lack thereof at Fox News caving to the mob and letting Tucker go over a bunch of reasonable yet unproven allegations? Well, I like Tucker Carlson. Like I watch, he's one of the few guys I watch that I listen to. And I'll say that I don't watch anybody else on Fox. I liked Tucker Carlson's content. I didn't always agree with him. But looking at this as objectively as possible, I would say that we don't know all of the factors at play. We don't know all the variables at play. Was it a concession made in the settlement over the lawsuit they just settled? Was it to take another voice away from Trump, during the next election? Was it because of internal pending charges that were being faced, that he was facing for all these reasons that some ladies litigating for? Like, we don't know. Ultimately, we don't know. And I'm okay knowing that, right? So there's a concept called Bayesian thinking, and it's based on Bayes' theorem. And it gets admittedly more complex than my capabilities allow me to fully experience. But I would say my working understanding of the theory and the utility I have for it is in what I will share now. When you have limited information, develop a limited position so that new information that right now is in the realm of possibility cannot undermine the position that you currently establish. Because if new valid information can debunk or disprove your current position, that means your current position has made presumptions where facts should have been input. All right, so hope that makes sense. Little Bayes theorem at the end of the thing, right? So I appreciate you guys. MasterChim.com. You guys know the deal. Like, subscribe, all that. I'm another guy playing the game here. Help me play it, because tribe matters, and tribe is how we play it best. I appreciate you all. I'll see you guys next week. And as always, brothers and sisters, pressure to power.